Michael Anthony and Eddie Van Halen, two men whose names are inseparable from rock history, have always shared a bond that few understood beyond the stage. At 70, Michael Anthony finally breaks in tears, revealing a truth about Eddie Van Halen that has remained hidden for decades. For fans, this is not just a confession. It is a window into the private life behind the music, the brotherhood forged in the chaos of fame, and the silent struggles that accompanied the world's greatest guitar virtuoso. Michael speaks of love, regret, and loyalty, the moments when friendship was tested, when words were left unsaid, and when silence carried a weight heavier than any stage or spotlight. Finally, Michael's tears expose the hidden reality of their bond, a truth about loyalty, music, and the human heart behind the legend of Eddie Van Halen. Michael Anthony was born in 1954 in Chicago, Illinois, into a world where music flowed through everyday life. He discovered the bass guitar in his teenage years, drawn to its deep, resonant tones, and quickly developed a skill that would one day define the rhythm of a legendary band. His early life was shaped by family, local bands, and a relentless drive to pursue music with purpose and precision. Anthony's quiet determination and natural talent would eventually place him on a path that few could imagine, a path that led directly to Van Halen. Eddie Van Halen, born in 1955 in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, grew up with music in his blood. His father, a classically trained musician, introduced him to the piano, while his older brother Alex inspired him to explore percussion and guitar. Eddie's childhood was a mixture of discipline, creativity, and a relentless curiosity for sound. By the late 1960s, Eddie's extraordinary skill on the guitar began to attract attention, his fingers moving with a speed and precision that seemed impossible. He and Alex shared a vision of a band that could combine technical brilliance with raw energy, a dream that would later become Van Halen. The formation of the band in the early 1970s brought together Eddie Van Halen, Alex Van Halen, Michael Anthony, and David Lee Roth. Their chemistry was immediate, a combination of technical mastery and instinctive musical connection. Rehearsals in cramped garages and small clubs honed their sound, a fusion of hard rock, melody, and unstoppable energy. Michael's bass provided the foundation for Eddie's intricate guitar work, while Alex's drumming drove the rhythm with power and precision. David Lee Roth's voice soared above it all, creating an unmistakable identity for the band. As Van Halen began to gain attention in the mid-1970s, the pressure of early success tested their unity. Long nights on the road, relentless touring schedules, and the demands of recording albums created tension that only their shared passion for music could sustain. Even as fame approached, the members relied on one another, forming bonds that were stronger than ordinary friendship. Michael Anthony often recalled the trust that grew from these early years, the knowledge that each member carried not only musical skill but the weight of responsibility to the others. By 1978, Van Halen had released their debut album, an instant sensation. Their performances were electrifying, capturing audiences with energy, precision, and a raw sense of excitement that few bands could match. Michael's steady bass lines anchored Eddie's soaring solos, the interplay between them creating a sound that would influence generations. Behind the lights and applause, however, there was an unspoken pressure, a tension born of expectations, competition, and the constant scrutiny of a growing audience. Every note carried weight, every tour demanded perfection, and every success added to the burden of what they had promised themselves and their fans. Yet within the chaos of touring, recording, and the burgeoning fame, there existed a quiet brotherhood. Michael and Eddie shared moments of laughter, frustration, and creative triumph that no audience could see. They celebrated victories in small, private ways and leaned on each other during setbacks that never reached the headlines. It was in these moments that the depth of their connection formed, the kind of bond that is rarely understood until it is tested by time, loss, and the inevitable human cost of living under the glare of legend. By the end of the decade, Van Halen had established themselves as one of rock's most influential bands, Eddie Van Halen was celebrated as a revolutionary guitarist, Michael Anthony recognized as the steady heart of their sound, and the band as a whole became a symbol of energy, innovation, and daring. Behind the acclaim, the story of friendship, loyalty, and sacrifice remained largely untold, a story that would only be revealed decades later when Michael, at 70, finally spoke the truth about the bond he shared with Eddie Van Halen. Decades passed, yet Michael Anthony carried a truth about Eddie Van Halen that remained unspoken, a truth that lived quietly behind the music, behind the bright lights, and behind the roar of thousands of fans. At 70, he finally allowed himself to speak, tears flowing as he recounted moments that had haunted him in private. His words were not for scandal, but for honesty, a tribute to the man who had shaped not only the sound of a generation, but the rhythm of his own life. Michael described Eddie not just as a genius guitarist, but as a brother, a mentor, and a man who wrestled with his own demons while carrying the weight of unparalleled talent. Michael spoke of the relentless pressure of life on the road, tours that lasted months, nights spent performing to sold-out arenas, and days consumed by recording schedules left little space for rest or reflection. Eddie, driven by perfection, often pushed himself and the band to their limits. Michael remembered standing backstage watching his friend work tirelessly, refusing to allow even a single note to fall short of what he envisioned. There were victories celebrated in the spotlight, but there were private battles that fans could never see, moments of frustration, exhaustion, and doubt that only the band members knew existed. He revealed the personal cost of success, the sacrifices made in the pursuit of music. Eddie's creativity was unmatched, yet it came at the expense of sleep, solitude, and sometimes peace of mind. Michael recounted nights when Eddie would retreat to his guitar, obsessively working on riffs and solos, determined to create sounds that would leave the world in awe. Those moments brought admiration and worry in equal measure. Michael felt pride, but he also felt helplessness, aware that the very brilliance that defined Eddie's life also carried a weight that few could understand. There were times of tension, moments when the pressures of the band strained their relationship. Creative differences, exhaustion, and the endless scrutiny of fame tested their friendship. Yet even in disagreement, a deep respect endured. Michael spoke of those times with a mixture of regret and love, acknowledging that some words were never said, some reassurances never offered, and some gratitude was left unspoken. It was this silence that haunted him most, the awareness that decades could pass without fully expressing the depth of connection they shared. Michael also reflected on Eddie's generosity and loyalty, qualities that were often invisible to the public. Eddie supported him, encouraged him, and at times shielded him from the harsh realities of fame. The band's success was a shared achievement, yet Eddie carried responsibilities in ways that were sometimes invisible to everyone but Michael and the others. In recalling these memories, Michael's tears were not just sorrow. They were an acknowledgement of admiration, gratitude, and the human cost of brilliance. Through his revelation, Michael invited the world to see Eddie Van Halen not only as a musical legend, but as a man shaped by love, sacrifice, and relentless ambition. He spoke of the moments that defined their bond, the late nights in rehearsal spaces, the laughter in hotel rooms, and the unspoken understanding that they were in it together, navigating fame, creativity, and the pressures of success side by side. It was a bond forged in music, strengthened by loyalty, and tested by life itself. Michael's words carried the weight of truth, a reminder that genius is never without cost, and that even those who seem untouchable are human, vulnerable, and deeply connected to those who walk beside them. In sharing this truth, he not only honored Eddie, but allowed himself to release years of unspoken emotion, setting the stage for reflection, understanding, and the emotional closure that would follow in the years to come. When Michael Anthony finally spoke about Eddie Van Halen, the world listened, not to gossip or for the hype, but to a deeply human story. Fans who had grown up with Van Halen's music were confronted with a perspective few had ever seen. Michael's words revealed the man behind the legend, the genius guitarist who had carried the weight of perfection, the relentless drive for innovation, and the private vulnerabilities that fame often concealed. The revelation reshaped how the public understood both the band and the friendship at its core. In the years following Van Halen's rise, Michael Anthony had witnessed the effects of fame on Eddie. The demands of global tours, recording albums, and meeting public expectations left little room for rest or reflection. Michael recalled nights when Eddie, exhausted but determined, would remain at his guitar, working tirelessly to perfect a solo or experiment with a new sound. It was in these private moments, away from the audience, that the true depth of Eddie's dedication became clear. Michael spoke of admiration and concern in equal measure, the knowledge that brilliance often comes at a cost the world cannot see. Michael's emotional revelation also prompted reflection on his own life and choices. He considered the years spent in the shadow of a bandmate whose talent often outshone his own, yet never diminished the essential role he played. His bass lines formed the foundation of every song, providing rhythm and stability, yet his contributions had been largely unsung outside of music circles. Speaking openly at 70 allowed Michael to acknowledge his part in the band's success, to honor Eddie's genius, and to share the quiet moments of brotherhood that had defined their careers. Fans and the music community responded with reverence. Social media and news outlets circulated Michael's statements, highlighting the emotional depth of his memories. Many recognized that Eddie Van Halen's accomplishments had always been extraordinary, yet the stories Michael shared added a layer of humanity to the legend. It was no longer only about groundbreaking guitar solos or chart-topping hits, but about loyalty, sacrifice, and the relationships that make such achievements possible. The revelation reminded audiences that even icons carry vulnerabilities, and that the bonds forged in music often sustain the heart as much as the performance. The story also inspired reflection on the cost of genius. Michael described the balance between creativity and personal well-being, how Eddie's obsession with music demanded both brilliance and endurance. While their public appearances captured the energy and charisma of Van Halen, behind the scenes there were long hours of labor, moments of frustration, and a relentless commitment to their craft. Michael's testimony illuminated the sacrifices Eddie made, and the ways in which his dedication influenced every member of the band, every note of every performance, and every record that would endure for generations. In sharing these truths, Michael Anthony achieved more than an emotional release. He provided perspective. He framed Van Halen's legacy, not only in terms of musical innovation, but in the human connections that made the innovation possible. The emotional aftermath emphasized reflection over scandal, loyalty over rivalry, and understanding over judgment. It demonstrated that music is never created in isolation, and that the bonds between musicians often shape not just their work, but the lives of everyone who experiences it. Michael's revelation also carried a subtle redemption. By acknowledging both the struggles and triumphs of Eddie Van Halen, he honored the memory of their friendship, giving fans and future generations a fuller picture of the man who changed music forever. It was a reminder that even amidst the chaos of fame, it is never too late to tell the truth, to recognize loyalty, and to celebrate the people who make greatness possible. Time eventually softened the weight of decades, allowing Michael Anthony to speak freely about Eddie Van Halen, honoring both the man and the music they had created together. At 70, Michael reflected on the bond that had carried them through early struggles, international fame, and personal challenges. His words were a tribute to the genius of Eddie Van Halen, a man whose talent transformed rock music, and to the friendship that had sustained them both through years of intense pressure, relentless touring, and the constant demand to deliver perfection. Eddie's life and work had always been extraordinary. From the early days in Amsterdam to the formation of Van Halen in the early 1970s, his brilliance on the guitar reshaped the sound of rock and influenced generations of musicians. His technical skill, innovation, and relentless drive set him apart, yet behind the virtuosity was a man of dedication, loyalty, and humanity. Michael Anthony's testimony illuminated this side of Eddie, the moments when genius met vulnerability, and when private perseverance translated into public triumph. Michael's steady bass lines and harmony vocals formed the backbone of Van Halen's sound, providing balance to Eddie's explosive guitar work. Through decades of touring, recording, and performing to millions, Michael remained a constant presence, a witness to both brilliance and struggle. Speaking openly about their shared journey allowed him to honor Eddie while acknowledging the depth of their connection, a connection that had been quietly shaping music and lives for nearly 50 years. Fans and the music community embraced this new perspective. Michael's reflections added nuance to the public understanding of Eddie Van Halen, emphasizing the humanity behind the legend. It became clear that the success of Van Halen was not solely defined by virtuosity and fame, but by loyalty, respect, and the enduring bond between bandmates. The story highlighted the sacrifices inherent in greatness, the private challenges behind public performance, and the emotional currency of friendship that often goes unseen. For Michael Anthony, speaking these truths offered both relief and redemption. He expressed gratitude for the years he spent alongside Eddie, for the moments of shared triumph and struggle, and for the unspoken understanding that had defined their relationship. By recounting their history, he ensured that Eddie's legacy was remembered not only in notes, solos, and albums, but in the human story of devotion, perseverance, and mutual respect that sustained them through decades of creative excellence. Their legacy, forged through music and brotherhood, now stands as a testament to enduring friendship and artistic brilliance. Eddie Van Halen's influence remains unmatched, shaping guitarists and inspiring musicians across generations, while Michael Anthony's contributions remind the world that behind every legend is a network of collaborators whose dedication and loyalty make greatness possible. Through this reflection, the emotional closure is clear. Truth, love, and friendship endure beyond fame, beyond silence, and beyond loss. In the quiet years that follow, the music of Van Halen will continue to echo, carrying the legacy of a band forged in brotherhood, resilience, and relentless creativity. Michael Anthony's tears, finally expressed, are not simply an act of remembrance, they are a recognition of the truth that underlies every great partnership, that human connection, loyalty, and shared passion endure, and that even decades later, the bond between friends and musicians can transcend time. In the end, the story of Michael Anthony and Eddie Van Halen is not only about music, but about loyalty, truth, and the bonds that survived the pressures of fame. Michael's tears at 70 revealed a truth that had remained unspoken for decades, showing the world the man behind the legendary guitar, the dedication, the sacrifice, and the humanity that defined Eddie Van Halen. Their friendship was forged in the heat of performance, in the long nights of rehearsal, and in the quiet understanding that comes from shared ambition and mutual respect. Through his revelation, Michael reminded fans that greatness is never without cost, that brilliance carries its own struggles, and that the bonds formed in music endure long after the applause fades. Eddie Van Halen's legacy will live on in every note, every solo, and every song that continues to inspire musicians across generations, while Michael's perspective ensures that the heart behind the legend is never forgotten. In the story of their friendship, the world sees devotion, courage, and the human truth that even in genius, connection always matters. For more emotional stories, check out this video.